Though Microsoft have been taking huge steps to make sure that their first-party lineup is stronger next generation than it has ever been, a lack of quality exclusives is still one of the Xbox One's biggest issues, bigger than it ever was for the Xbox or the Xbox 360. Even the exclusives that it does have aren't all that good, with many being major and high-profile disappointments, and others being not that major but disappointing nonetheless. In this feature, we'll be taking a look at 15 such disappointing Xbox One exclusives, and do note that some of these games have been improved significantly since launch thanks to updates, and that we're primarily talking about disappointing launches. Also note that for the purposes of this list, we'll only be looking at Xbox One console exclusives, and with that out of the way, let's get into it. RYSE: Son of Rome. RYSE: Son of Rome took our breath away when it was first revealed, showcasing stunning visuals and looking like the kind of cinematic action-adventure killer app that the Xbox family had desperately been searching for. What we got was a disappointing mess that didn't even come close to achieving what we had hoped it would. Sure, it still looked good, but that's about as far as it went with the positives. CRACKDOWN 3. It's hard to look at CRACKDOWN 3 and reconcile the game that it is with the fact that it took Microsoft 5 years and multiple delays to ship this product. It's not a broken game, no, but it's thoroughly dull, completely unimaginative, and overly reliant on the kind of stuff that would have been deemed outdated in an open-world title even 10 years ago. CRACKDOWN 3 feels lifeless and barren, and doesn't offer much of anything that you would even remember a week after you're done with it. The fact that it pales in comparison even to the first Crackdown, which launched all the way back in 2007, speaks volumes about what a mess this game is. State of Decay 2. State of Decay 2 can actually be a lot of fun when it's focusing on what it's good at, which mostly boils down to its combat. Everything else in the game just doesn't work though. It is lacking any kind of depth to keep you invested for too long. Its world feels mundane and lifeless, and not the zombie kind of lifeless, while it also launched with countless bugs and technical issues plaguing it every step of the way. It just didn't feel like enough of a step forward after the first game, and in many ways, in fact, it felt like a step back. ReCore. ReCore was clearly a game that had grand ambitions, and one look at its distinct art style and offbeat world would have been enough to tell you that. It was just a case of the game not being able to do justice to its own ambitions. More often than not, ReCore felt disappointingly formulaic and uninspired, which was about the last thing we had expected it to be. Like many other games on this list, ReCore launched with a lot of technical issues, worst of which were the shockingly long loading times. In the end, it turned out to only be an okay game with many issues, whereas we had hoped it would be so much more. Halo 5 Guardians. Halo 5 Guardians seemed to completely misunderstand what Halo fans wanted out of the series. In the multiplayer department, it was a solid offering overall, but when it came to the campaign, it was a huge disappointment. The story was a mess, there was very little focus on Master Chief, and it seemed to double down on everything that had been wrong with Halo 4 rather than choosing to course correct. Dead Rising 3. During the Xbox 360 era, Capcom's Dead Rising had been one of the system's most beloved games, offering unadulterated and unapologetic zombie-slaying fun. Things completely turned around with the Xbox One though. Dead Rising 3, though a decent enough game, failed to live up to what fans expected. Its attempts at a story were an absolute mess. There wasn't nearly as much variety as one would have expected, while muddled visuals and technical issues also brought down the entire package's quality significantly. Dead Rising 4. Dead Rising 4 remains perhaps the most divisive game in the series. Because of all the changes it made, there was a lot that the game was really good at, such as surprisingly effective storytelling, fun combat, and markedly improved visuals. But in so many other areas, things the game did just didn't feel right. The removal of the timer system for starters was a big mistake, while other issues such as the sudden change in tone and a new voice actor coming in to play Frank West also rubbed series fans the wrong way. Dead Rising 4 was by no means a bad game, but it's just a shame that this is probably going to be the last we ever see of the series. Crimson Dragon. Launching the Xbox One with Crimson Dragon as one of its launch titles probably wasn't a very wise move by Microsoft. Though this isn't the worst game you'll ever play, it's still hard to think of anything it does that might make it even slightly easier to recommend it to anyone. Poor controls and shoddy, monotonous missions and level designs were just the tip of the iceberg when it came to issues with this game, and the fact that it launched with bafflingly aggressive monetization options did it no favors either. Halo: The Master Chief Collection. 343 Industries have, to their credit, turned the ship around almost completely with Halo: The Master Chief Collection, which is now an impressive collection of all things Halo in their best form possible, and is bound to get even better with the addition of Reach. But when the Master Chief Collection first launched, things were far, far worse. The bulk of the issues came from the online side of things, where matchmaking was flat out broken, and just didn't work. For a game in a series as reliant on competitive multiplayer as Halo is, broken matchmaking is about the worst possible issue it could have. Super Lucky's Tale. No one expected Super Lucky's Tale to be the next big Microsoft franchise or their own platforming mascot to rival the likes of, say, Mario and Luigi or Ratchet and Clank. But we at least expected it to be good, you know? And sure, it wasn't bad, but when the best thing you can say about the game is it wasn't bad, you know things are far from ideal. Frustrating camera issues, problems with controls, boring level design, and just an overall lack of imagination ensured that Super Lucky's Tale would never be anything more than a game worthy of a meek shrug. Fighter Within. Fighter Within was another one of Xbox One's launch titles, and like many others, it was far from an ideal one. It came at a time when Microsoft were still pushing the Kinect and its motion controls onto games, and Fighter Within suffered because of that. A game that is reliant on controls that simply don't work isn't really much of a game, now is it? KINECT Sports Rivals. KINECT Sports Rivals wasn't a bad game. It could be fun if you had absolutely nothing else to do, and unlike most titles that shove the Kinect down your throat, it actually seemed to work well enough. Only, well, no one really asked for this. Beyond being fun on a surface level and beyond working the least amount any game should work, KINECT Sports Rivals did nothing else, and that's not high praise for any game. Xbox Fitness. It seems like Microsoft tried to make bank on the Kinect every single way Nintendo ever did with the Wii. They ripped off Wii Sports with KINECT Sports titles, and they also went ahead and made a fitness-focused Kinect game called Xbox Fitness. Really, Xbox Fitness wasn't really disappointing because no one really expected anything of it. It was just, well, again, no one ever asked for this. It was yet another example of Microsoft trying to make the Kinect a thing when it very clearly wasn't ever going to be one. POWERSTAR Golf. You'd be forgiven for not remembering or knowing what POWERSTAR Golf is, and if that is indeed the case, then believe me, you're not missing much. It was a fun enough game when it's at its best, especially when played with friends, but there's not much special about it at all, nothing remarkable. It's among the most inoffensively mediocre and unremarkable Xbox One games you'll ever play. Zombie Driver Ultimate Edition. Zombie Driver was no one's favorite Xbox 360 or PS3 game, so getting an Ultimate Edition exclusively for the Xbox One was baffling enough. Sadly, even more baffling was that there was nothing really ultimate about it, and the game was just as dull and repetitive as it had always been. And even outside of that repetitive campaign, there wasn't a lot else to do given its complete omission of any proper multiplayer options. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.